Hey guys, so last week I did a video on the definition of religion, and it was a little bit dull, so I apologize for that. But basically it was kind of leading up to the second part of defining religion and kind of, coming from religion from this outsider's perspective. And so what I wanted to talk about was how religion and basically institutionalizes. The reason I wanted to talk about this is because a lot of times people will do these things in the institutional evolution of religion and not even realize what they're doing. And one thing as spiritual leaders and things like that we have to worry about is doing these things and actually, hurting the process of spiritual evolution instead of helping it. There's a spiritual evolution, there's institutional evolution of religion. And so this kind of covers both of them. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some work from a sociologist called Thomas O'Day. And he discussed religion and the dilemmas of institutionalization. And basically what it discusses is as a religion goes through the process of becoming an institution, the problems that it faces along that process of doing that. And the reason that I think this is important in the pagan culture is because there are so many new religious movements that are coming up in the pagan culture that are going through this process right now, primarily Wicca. And you can recognize this in some, if you know about Wiccan culture and stuff like that. So I think it's really important. For that reason, this is why I'm doing this. So basically, in the evolution of religion, there are stages of religions. For example, there are small religions that are not really very well institutionalized are called cults. The cult experience starts, process starts with basically experience that is interpreted as divine. So something happens that is divinely, is divinely unique. We'll put it that way. So something that's different from the current interpretations of divine comes up in an experiential way, and from that several things happen. First of all, from that experience there's a cosmology that's derived. Cosmology is kind of someone's view of the universe, so to speak, and that's derived from the experiential interpretation. From that, one would define what is sacred. There are things that are mundane or, not sacred, and there's things that are sacred which are associated with the divine. And this process happens within defining cosmology and stuff like that. We associate earthly things with that which is interpreted to be divine. And we'll get into this into the dilemmas as well. But, creating these associations is important to kind of further the process of religion. And this all happens at what we call the cult stage of religion. Now, I don't mean cult in the way Waco, Texas or Heaven's Gate or anything like that. I mean cult in the terminology of being a small, unrecognized, not very well organized religion, which is what cult actually means. Now, from this cosmology, they then develop stories and mythology that tell about the experience with interpretive aspects to help people remember it and, to kind of add to the sacred knowledge, so to speak, of what happened. And then from that mythology, there's behavior that's derived from mythological aspects. For example, like ritual, ethics, holy days, and observances, so forth and so on. So this all happens in the cult stage of religion. Once a religion starts becoming to institutionalized, certain things happen. The first would be, and these are Thomas O'Day's, you can look them up, the dilemma of mixed motivation. And basically, as a religion institutionalizes, the roles of authority emerge on both the institutional and community level. All people bring slightly different interpretations of the divine into their beliefs and therefore have different motivations behind their religious authority. These motivations create change within the religious structure. Okay, I'm going to give you an example from paganism and some examples that aren't pagan. All right. Within, religion as a whole, if we take the Mormon religion, for example, there's more than two splits, actually, but I'm going to talk about, two of them, basically, which is the Latter-day Saints and the Fundamentalist Mormon Church. Now, or the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, FLDS versus LDS is what one could call them. And as the religion kind of went through all these changes from having their headquarters in New York to Illinois to Missouri, and then eventually go to Utah, and it was kind of, there were some stops in between there. There's a lot of things that happened to create change within the religion. Experiences happened, social changes happened, and basically what ended up happening is that the religious authorities took one of the fundamental ideas of the religion, which was polygamy, and said this is no longer a fundamental aspect of this religion. And, so basically the religious authorities took out a major aspect of the religion. And, other religious authorities disagreed. And what happened was that the people who agreed with this change, stuck with the church, and the people who didn't agree went off and splintered and made their own church. And so that's why you have the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints and the Latter-day Saints. And that's an idea of mixed motivation. The people who decided to take out the polygamous aspect obviously had political reasons for their change. And they also didn't see any necessity to this idea of polygamy. But, they're like a spiritual necessity, for example. They didn't feel it was necessary to be a Mormon and to achieve enlightenment or salvation in their eyes by going through this process of polygamy, like their forefathers did, like Joseph Smith did. Now, other people disagreed and thought that it was a central aspect to this idea of enlightenment or salvation, and therefore went off and formed what they called the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints. So, that's an idea of, different motivations creating change within the religious structure. Now, within pagan religions, for example, there's several different, examples of this. The major one that I can think of is within Wicca, and that would be that we've got traditional Gardnerian, Alexandrian, oath-bound, initiatory covens, and then we have the kind of eclectic, solitary, kind of what we call North American Wicca, so to speak. And it basically came, from what I can see in my study of the history of Wicca, it came from the kind of group of Wiccans, starting with Raymond Buckland and a few other key individuals like Scott Cunningham, who had started teaching the religion in North America, had been themselves part of oath-bound initiatory covens, and gone through that process and become authorities of the religion, and then said this oath-bound initiatory process is no longer necessary, that you can self-initiate. And it took a while, it took a process for some people to admit that, some longer than others. If you read Scott Cunningham's books, for example, he always kind of advocated this solitary practice. He said himself that basically all the initiatory oath-bound knowledge has been released, and therefore it's no longer needed to be part of an oath-bound covenant to do this. Ray Buckland, it took him a little bit longer. If you read his early books, he says, you can do a self-initiatory now, but you're not really Wiccan until you join a coven. But if you read his later work, he abandons that and decides that yes, there is solitaries, and that solitaries do exist, and so forth and so on. And so, if you get into the authorities of the religion and those people who learned from those people and so forth and so on, you've basically got this split within Wiccan, philosophy, which is, the kind of traditionalist, oath-bound philosophy that we could call British traditionalist Wicca. And then we've got the whole North American Wicca, which, came from the idea of kind of a freer, less authoritarian idea of spirituality. Both are Wiccan, but they're definitely two very different branches of the religion. there's the British traditionalists, and then there's this kind of North American eclectic. And so, and just like with the Mormons, one branch will tell the other branch that they're not really part of that religion. But really, when it comes down to it, and in the societal definition of the religion, both adhere to that definition, just in different ways. So, I personally think that's really interesting. Wow, I'm at 10 minutes already. So this is going to continue to part 2. I can make a longer video, but nobody wants to watch a big old long video, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to cut it off here, and I'm going to go on to the next dilemma. And there's 5 total, so we'll see how far we get there.